With the exception of today's prayer, we recorded the service before information about the gravity of the president's situation became public. We pray for him, his family, this country, and every member of the human family who has suffered during the pandemic. We offer today's worship in the hopes that it will aid you in finding the light within, so that you may bless the world during these difficult times.
Thank you for joining us at First Unitarian Universalist Church of Houston for our online worship service. I am Carol Burris, and I'm grateful to serve you as your Director of Religious Community. This morning, we welcome to our pulpit the Reverend Duncan Teague. Reverend Teague is a UU minister who founded Abundant Life UU Church in Atlanta, Georgia. He has also had many successes for advocacy for LGBTQ rights and is a writer and a poet. We are grateful he has returned to offer his wisdom to our congregation. Reverend Teague is joined today by our ministers, Reverend Dr. Colin Bosson, Reverend Scott Cooper, and members of our church staff, Alex Kaimig, Alma Viscara, Mark Vogel, as well as church member Steve Colvin on drums. In addition, this morning, we begin our first Sunday of the month family chalice lighting and our first Sunday of the month big idea. Lighting their family chalice this morning are Susan Daniels and her son Griffin. And for our big idea, we are introducing, for the first time, especially for the young among us, Ruthie, Ralph, and Scoop. You'll just have to wait for the big idea for them. In his sermon titled, Standing on Holy Ground, Reverend Teague draws on Christian and Buddhist stories, as well as recent leaders who have inspired us to explore how we Unitarian Universalists can find grounding during these difficult times. Some of you may be new to our congregation or our online services, so let us say a few words about Unitarian Universalism. Unitarian Universalism is a faith where you can bring your whole self, your full identity, your questioning mind, and your expansive heart. As Unitarian Universalists, we join together on a journey that honors everywhere we've been before. And together, we create a force more powerful than one person or one belief system. Our beliefs are diverse and inclusive. Rather than a creed, we share a covenant based on a set of 7 principles. And here are 3 of those principles. These include the free and responsible search for truth and meaning, the inherent worth and dignity of every person, and the knowledge that we are a part of an interdependent web of all existence that calls us to honor the earth and all creatures. This morning we welcome both newcomers and those who've been part of our beloved congregation for a long time. Thank you for joining us. We now invite you to hear our call to worship.
Enter, rejoice, and come in. Today will be a joyful day. Our opening hymn contains these words and our call to worship too. A reminder that no matter how difficult the hour, no matter how challenging the era, the possibility of joy continues in this house, in these sacred walls, in your heart and in mine. Joy in the sunflower, in the autumn sky, in the cold moon, in that things that can bring us together despite the distance of pixels, the magic of song, the truth that the earth is forever turning, and the truth that human connection, even in this time of disconnection, is possible, and that the human mouth was made to smile. Enter, rejoice, and come in. May the hour we share, may the music we hear, may the wisdom that comes stir up the joyful spark of divine within each of us and remind us of all that unites us. Come, friends, let us worship together.
Celebremos luz, compartiendo nuestras vidas, encendiendo esta luz.
Our opening song this morning comes from Singing the Living Tradition. This is number 361, Enter, Rejoice, and Come In. Please join us in singing. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Open your ears to the song. Open your ears to the song. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Open your hearts, everyone. Open your hearts, everyone. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Don't be afraid of some change. Don't be afraid of some change. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in.
Welcome to this week's Big Idea. Let's check in on Ruthie, Ralphie, and Scoop and see what they're up to.
Hey, it's good to see you. I've missed you.
Who said that?
I did. Here. Over here.
Hi, Ruthie. What have you been doing?
Well, our family is working on our own 10 Commandments. I heard some of the other families at our church are making some too.
Why would we do that? It sounds like mean, old-fashioned rules from the Bible.
Well, maybe 10 Commandments isn't really the best name for them. It's like the promises you make to each other in your family that make being in your family feel right and good.
I'll have to think about that one. I don't usually make promises. I usually say something like, well, we'll see.
My family calls our promises our covenant. Our family covenant says things like, we promise to spend one evening every week doing something together, like playing a game or reading a book, and we promise to eat dinner together at least 5 nights a week.
I like promises about dinner. I eat dinner almost every day.
Well, what do you do on the days you don't eat dinner?
I eat supper. My favorite supper is baked potato with chili.
In our covenant, we promise to help each other with things. Like for my parents, it's usually that I help with making dinner or washing the car. And for me, it's my mom helping me with my science homework, or my dad helping me get to school. And for my baby brother, it's that we all help to clean up his toys. But he's learning to help pick up too, because it's part of the covenant.
Yeah, that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. And there can be big things like, we promise to be honest, to tell the truth to each other. Because when we lie, it's hard for others to know they can trust us.
I have one. I have one. Not a messy baby brother. A promise. We promise that we will all have a sense of humor. I want that one because maybe you didn't know this, but I'm funny. Really.
I know. I'm really excited. My family is going to weekly family gathering night on Wednesdays at church, and we are creating our own family covenant. All of you should come too. It's online.
Or, if you are hearkening back to the days of the Old Testament, in the Hebrew Bible, you could call it the family's 10 Commandments.
Wow, Ralphie,
Ralphie,
you sure
I wasn't
are
expecting
full
you to
of
say that.
surprises.
Conversations about the things that matter is something we want to make time for. We are happy for our First UU families, making family covenants and making time for important conversations.
Thank you this morning for joining me in a time of prayer and meditation. For those of us who pray, we are anticipating, hopefully, a message from the source outside of ourselves. For some of us, it is just a time to be together with others, and for some of us, we want to hear from deep within ourselves. I want to say thank you to the staff and the ministers who are allowing me for this intimate moment with you in worship. I want you to know that your ministers and your staff that minister to you in worship and in the other parts of your congregation work late into the night and early into the morning to assure that we try to keep up with all that's going on, and so that your worship experience reflects what's really happening for those of us in this world now, where news and information changes very swiftly. So there's a time difference between when I recorded the sermon and when I'm joining you now in prayer. I'm offering prayers this morning to provide the connection that we desire for what it means to be people of faith in the midst of change that occurs like sand shifting between us. Let us be mindful this morning of the strength that only comes from our being together, not in lockstep with each other, but in love and in commitment with each other. Not because we all agree on everything, on every political trope or every stance that a political group takes. We don't agree. But our power is there because we know the power of love to overcome adversity and evil. I want to start off in thanksgiving and praise again for your congregation and your ministerial leadership. I admire them. I'm grateful for all that they have done to make my experience with you a wonderful and spiritual time together. Thank you so much. In the words of your minister, find your center, find your ground, connect to the earth of all from whom we all come and to who we will all return. May we find the place where our souls, our deep-held concerns can find peace. May our anxieties and fears this morning give us a moment of reprieve as we gather. The power of healing of this sacred place spread far and wide, but still together bring us healing. While we are in the storms of life, both personal and communal, political and ethical storms, familial and national storms. While we are tossed and turned by all that happens within just 1 week, may we find healing in being for each other, love unfettered and forgiving. And may a hungry world look to us for that love. Holy is our common experience of pain and grief, awe and joy. May we walk this sacred ground, spirit of life, forgiving and sheltering, remind us to do better. May we do better, so much better. Until we all understand better by and by. Thank you for all that is as well as it is. Bless those who are in pain. Help those who are in grief and show us how to be that help and that relief for them. Thank you. Amen. We gather also this morning for the prayers of the people within your community. I thank you for letting me join you in this. We ask that you would lift up that which sits heavy and light on your hearts. We pray for Joan Waddell and her family. Joan's brother Stephen Waddell died on Friday after a long illness. I ask that you remember the family of Elandria Williams, our former moderator, and her dear friends, and the community of Tennessee Valley Unitarian Universalist Church in Knoxville, Tennessee, as we all grieve the sudden loss of Elandria Williams. I invite you now to say the name or bring to mind those who you wish to be held by the loving embrace of this religious community. In this great cloud of witnesses and memory, amid this beloved community, we hear these names and hold them in our hearts. We pause in awe and wonder of the mystery that is life. In the spirit of love, in the spirit of hope, in the spirit of compassion, I invite each of you to enter into a time of silent prayer, meditation, or reflection. May all these concerns be held gently and lovingly. Amen.
This morning's shared offering will go to support our church's voting justice efforts. We're in tough times. Unitarian Universalist values highlight the importance of maintaining and engaging with democracy and the democratic process. Now, that's more important than ever. Your financial support in this time allows us to further support local voters' access to and engagement with the democratic process that we believe in. We're sending postcards and text messages, making phone calls, engaging with other local organizations, and more to promote and maintain voting justice in our community. Our regular Sunday morning offering collection invites us to weave a tapestry of love and action. Today, through our shared offering to our church's voting justice efforts, you are doing just that, providing the necessary threads so that we can demonstrate the love of this community for all of its members through our actions and our belief that everyone has a voice that deserves to be heard. So I would like to ask that you give generously. An offering will now gratefully be received.
Exodus 3:1-5. Now Moses was keeping the flock of his father-in-law, Jethro, the priest of Midian, and he led his flock to the west side of the wilderness, and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. And the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a flame of fire out of the midst of a bush. And he looked, and lo, the bush was burning, yet it was not consumed. And Moses said, I will turn aside and see this great sight, why the bush is not burnt. When the Lord saw that he turned aside to see, God called to him out of the bush, Moses, Moses. And he said, Here am I. Then he said, Do not come near. Put off your shoes from your feet, for the place on which you are standing is holy ground.
Our second reading is entitled, What is the Bodhi Tree? Some 2,500 years ago, for more than a month, Siddhartha meditated beneath a fig tree in Bodh Gaya, India. After 49 days, he stood from his meditative position. He thanked the tree for its shade and found enlightenment. It was then that he became the Buddha, or the Enlightened One. The fig tree that sheltered the Buddha took on great significance as the Buddhist religion developed. Just as Siddhartha became the Buddha, the tree became the Bodhi tree.
When I was last with you, Reverend Scott Cooper and Reverend Boyson both went to great lengths to get me to Houston. And I wanted to come to Houston, but I didn't really feel the urgency that they did about their schedule and our timing. And I am so grateful for their sense of doing it right then, because February was my last trip out of Atlanta. It was my last chance to be a guest speaker face to face with the congregation. And I'm sorry that I can't be there in person. This would be a wonderful time, I think, to be in Houston. And so much has happened to us since I was with you. I'm joining you from our sacred, holy ground, our backyard here in Georgia. And this morning, I'm really proud that you are looking at our elements. I think the Native Americans call them, as you're giving attention to water, earth, air, and fire. And you're in the section of earth. And so the big question I'm asking is, one of them is, what if the earth in her totality is sacred ground? What if all the earth is our sacred ground? What if we get to choose what is sacred even in that? And in fact, we always do choose what is sacred. And I'm proposing this morning that as we talk about this, that you consider where you need to mark as a sacred place, a holy ground, where maybe you need to take your sandals off like Moses. I'm remembering when someone special dies, and we have to set aside a place where we can adorn that place with flowers. A normal highway sign, a spot on a road, can become a shrine to someone who's loved and who's lost their lives, where we travel every day, but in that one spot, it's become holy. Do you remember seeing, if you did, the pictures of the Supreme Court during the thousands of people who needed to pay their respects to the deceased Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg? And the Supreme Court building steps, which can be a place of protest, which can be a place of our legal struggles, but that day they were a shrine to her, and it was covered in flowers. It changed the steps. And we were not only grieving her, but we were grieving our fear of who will occupy her seat. How will that happen? And I'm reminded of the Buddha's sacred place, which has been regarded as the Bodhi tree. And that in the same way that we chose the steps, I am proposing, and I'm not Buddhist, but I'm proposing that the Buddha chose the Bodhi tree, the fig tree, as the place to sit and gain his enlightenment. And according to legend, he sat there for years. But I'm going to go to the tree itself, because it turns out that when you research the tree, the fig tree, over time, for millennia, has been regarded as a sacred tree, and in many different cultures, because in the right climates, it never stops producing fruit. And there are specific species of fig trees, specific genus of fig trees, that have specific pollinators that cannot, and through evolution, reproduce without that particular kind of fig tree. So when the Buddha chose the tree to sit under to gain his enlightenment, he had already chosen a tree that was sacred, a place that was sacred. And his story is made more profound by the place he chose. I'm curious about the places you've chosen to gain your enlightenment. Where did you hear truth? Is there a place where you had to go, or where maybe you were sent, and in that place your life changed forever, like the Buddha's, like Moses, where he had to stop and not just keep walking, but he had to take his shoes off? Where did you hear the truth for the first time? Do you think about who we are as Unitarian Universalists and what we do? And is there a place where we need to lay our meditation mats down? I am recalling when I first met Elandria Williams, our former moderator who passed away recently. She was a friend. She was somebody I admired. She was a teacher, that's for sure. And on the very first day we met, she introduced me to a young gay activist in Knoxville, right out there on the steps in front of the building. And they proceeded to quiz me. They didn't know me. And I think in that introduction, Elandria wanted to know, where do you stand? What truths do you hold sacred? You're our new interim minister, and I have this friend here, and he wants to know who you are. And she was doing that because I was in her sacred place, her home congregation. And I'm thinking now that whenever I enter that building, I am going to remember being outside in front with Elandria and her friend the very first time we met, where she sort of held court about me and my internship. And we parted fine as friends, and over the years we've become closer. Her mother and I actually worked together on my internship. And Elandria did this for many people, pointing out the places where, no, that's sacred ground. You need to stop. And I treasure her for that. In the story of Moses, he had to take his shoes off, and he left the crowd that he was leading behind and went up the mountain alone. Sometimes this place that we need to ground ourselves in, this place that's a place of foundation for something new for us, has to be a place that we enter alone. We can't be there with a crowd, where we can see it, where we can hear it, feel it, and we might be the only ones who get the message, even if we're in a crowd. And he has to take his shoes off. He has to show that kind of respect. It's a cultural norm in many places to show respect by removing your shoes that you travel all over the place in. Some of you may have that custom in your homes. In a temple or any place that's considered sacred, where you take the everyday off and you enter a new space and you're allowed to relax or be respectful here without that. Have you ever gone to a place, a home, a building, and you knew it wasn't comfortable to take your shoes off? You knew you didn't want to take not only your shoes off, you didn't want to take your coat off. And you didn't want to put your bag or your purse or your backpack down. You wanted to keep it all with you because the place told you something about the place, said, this is not safe for me to relax. So I'm going to keep it all on me. It's not holy ground in that way. And if in case we have to leave, we want to leave everything with us, not put it somewhere. I love that the home that we've created, David and I, is a place where sometimes we have several friends who walk in the door, and before they can get past the rug in the front entryway, they have taken their shoes off. And we don't require that. But it's sort of a blessing to us that where we have our lives together is a place where people feel like they can relax. That when they walk in, they feel like, oh, I can take my shoes off, I'm all right here. That's a blessing. I'm proud of that. And those people who bless our home with that feeling of love and acceptance. I hope that we have learned, if nothing else, as congregational people, that where we worship, we want folks to maybe leave their shoes on, but feel as though they can take them off because they're all right here. Places where the truth is here, and where I'm wondering, where did you receive some truth from a wise person? Should we put a marker on a restaurant or a bar that you went to? And I know that some of y'all got some truth at a bar. I know I did. And it was late in the evening or the afternoon, and there might have been a drink present to help you receive that truth. Places where you've heard something that was helpful. Places where you didn't have to worry about being oppressed, being compromised about who you authentically are. And places where they recognize you. Yeah, you can relax here because we know you. We accept you. For me, Plano, Texas is one of those places. Yeah, I know, Plano, Texas. And suffice it to say that I got the last big convincing sign in Plano, Texas in August of that year that I needed to start my congregation, Abundant Love. Not only that I needed to do it, but I got the message so clearly at that church planting retreat in Plano, Texas, where I was just there with a friend, that I could do it. That planting my new congregation was not beyond my skills. In that little hotel conference room, ran by the United Methodists, I got the message so clearly that now for me, that place in Plano, Texas, and I don't have to go back, especially not in August. It's a sacred place for me. I hope that I got the right message, that it just wasn't the heat, because you know it was hot. The other place that I'm reminded of that was sacred for me was a country club plaza where I worked as a teenager in high school and I think a semester in college. And I was a stock boy. I put shoes in order in the basement. I received the new shoes. I marked the boxes. And I carried them up and down. And I also washed the windows. And I took a year out of college. I didn't drop out of college. I stopped out. And I knew I was going to go back, but nobody else was convinced of that. And in that shoe store in the country club plaza, the older African-American man who was always kind to me, always friendly to me, pulled me aside. And he said, "Duncan, you don't belong here. You belong in school." And he had never said anything like that to me before. But when he said it, the confidence that I had that I was going back to school was proven to me. He didn't want me to get stuck as a stock boy in my life. And he cared about me. And so that point in this shopping mall, essentially, it's a very beautiful place in Kansas City, but in that shopping mall, standing in front of that window that I was washing, when he stopped me and gave me his support for being more than I was in that moment, that makes that place holy for me and sacred. Is there a tree for you like Buddha? During this shutdown, a lot of us need, because of our anxiety, because of all the things that have happened, because many of us are grieving, not only Elandria, but many of our friends who we've lost. Is there a tree, a spot in nature where you can touch the earth, where you can take your sandals off and stand in your holy ground and hear what God, if not God, what your soul, what your deepest desires need to tell you? I am so grateful for being back with you. You made my first trip to Houston wonderful, and I'm sure you'll make my return to your sacred place that again. Wherever you are today with us, viewing us, I'm going to ask that you take off your sandals because you're standing on holy ground, because you get to choose, like the Buddha chose the fig tree. You get to choose what is sacred ground for you. And may this week also be sacred for you. Thank you for having me.
When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we trust the wisdom in each of us, every color, every creed and kind, and we see our faces in each other's eyes, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we tell our story from deep inside, and we listen with a loving mind, and we hear our voices in each other's words, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we share the silence of sacred space, and the God of our heart stirs with strengthened, and we feel the power of each other's faith. Then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place.
We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Thank you again for having me to be with you in worship. I long for the day when I can be back in Houston and see you in person and greet you and experience you again in person. Our closing words today are, help us, O ancient earth, find the sacred places all about you. In the coolness of the cave, in the rich clay with iron ore, in the damp sand upon the shore. Lead us past our fear, and not let us forget the most dangerous sacredness deep within our hearts.
While our church's buildings is closed, our church's people is still meeting, but now online. There are weekly and monthly offerings to keep you connected and engaged with our community. Join us this morning at 11:30 for coffee half hour after the service. Don't miss a chance to connect and socialize while we're apart. Grab your favorite mug and log in to interact with new and old friends. You have 2 opportunities to talk to a minister during their office hours this week. Monday at 7 with Reverend Scott and Wednesday at 2 with Reverend Colin. Wednesday Family Gathering, designed for families with children 4 to 11, continues this week and begins at 6:30. Email Carol at firstuuhouston.org for the link. Many of the topics for upcoming discussion groups are on our website, firstuuhouston.org/online-group-meetings. Visit there for more details and to sign up. Remember, all times shown are Central Daylight Time.